Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a review of The Red Sleeve, which is a Korean drama. So let's get right into it. So I watched The Red Sleeve for the first time this year, but the drama actually aired in 2021. It stars Lee Jun-ho as the male lead, playing King Jeong-jo and Crown Prince Yesan, and then the female lead is played by Lee Se-young, who plays royal consort Ubin Sung and Sung Deok Im. And the characters they play are based on real life figures who basically had a very tragic relationship. So in real life, the female lead's character was a concubine of King Jeong-jo, but she died. She died quite early on, and I don't believe any of her children survived either. But the king was very much in love with her, and it's like pretty much all known throughout Korea how much they were in love with each other, and also their tragic romance, her dying quite young. I believe she died of liver cancer. And just like their beautiful tragic love. So that's what this story is based on. But I'll get into the actual story now. So the story follows a female lead, and in the program, in the show, she's a court lady. And court ladies have red sleeves because they serve the king, they serve the crown prince, yada, yada, yada. And we start off with her being an apprentice maid, and she's a really great storyteller, and she's using her storytelling skills to get money to basically allow her brother, who lives outside of the palace, a way to pay to take the imperial exam so that he can become a soldier like their dad was. We also find out that the female lead, her dad was considered to be a traitor because he was a royal guard, a very trusted royal guard of the former crown prince, who is the current crown prince, or the male lead's father, which already connects her fate-wise to the male lead. And so in the first couple of episodes, the female lead and male lead meet because she's sent on an errand to basically go and see a royal concubine that's just died. And this royal concubine is the grandmother of the male lead, who is the current crown prince. And they meet because he also is on his way there to see his royal grandmother, but he's not allowed to go. His grandfather, who is the king, tells him he's not allowed to go visit his grandmother, but because he loved his grandmother, he goes to see her anyway. And they meet and they form a bond and they kind of connect. And then they leave and they go their separate ways. And through it skips about 10 years later. And although the crown prince wanted to kind of thank her for being there for him in a really tough moment, there's no time to, and time goes on, they kind of forget about each other. And then when they meet again, they meet in a library because she's writing, he's transcribing, and he meets her there, and she doesn't actually know he's the crown prince, even though she serves in the crown prince's household. And as a result, they go through a series of events where they keep meeting each other, and they keep realizing how fated they are and how many things connect them. And he falls in love with her quite deeply. She also falls in love with him. Now, there's a lot of argument online about the program and the extent to which she was in love with the male lead, but I believe she was in love with the male lead. The difficulty with a crown prince loving a court lady is that within the context of classism, she could very easily be discarded. Let's say he sleeps with her and doesn't like the sex or whatever. She's discarded, right? But she can, after the crown prince has touched you in that way, you can't go and marry somebody else because you've already had the king, right? You're basically owned by the king, and he's also taken you sexually, right? So you can't then go and marry anybody else. So there's a huge risk in starting a relationship with the crown prince. So she's very much against it. And he loves her so much that he doesn't want that for her. He wants her to be his concubine. But in the same way, the female lead believes very much in her own personal agency and her own freedom, even if she is a slave to the kingdom, even if she is a court lady. And so their whole romance, and this is a 17 episode drama, by the way, their whole romance is based on a dance between I'm a court lady and you're crown prince, and you can do whatever you want to me, but I want my freedom. And it gets to a point where she gets so heavily involved within the court politics that not being by his side does actually become a danger to her if she's trying to live, and I do believe she's trying to survive. And so by episode 16, she does actually become his concubine, but she's very like reluctant to do so. And even though she loves him, her being a concubine was pretty much a death sentence for her, because she misses being a court lady. She misses just being a servant. She misses just being able to go out when she wants to on holidays and do what she wants to, because being his concubine, she's in a gilded cage. She's in that palace forever, all the time, right? And she can't ever leave. And although she does actually birth a son for him in the show, and I do believe in real life she also birthed a son, the son dies by the beginning of episode 17 from measles. In real life, their son also died by age 3 or 4. Like, I believe she had 5 pregnancies and they all failed. Like, none of her children survived to adulthood, quite unfortunately. And so in the show, she's grieving that child, and he's telling her to like suck it up pretty much, because she's a royal consort and she needs to like keep her head up high. And she tells him like, I didn't ever want this in the first place. You put me in this position and now I'm hurting more than if I never was with you in the first place. And then she dies, and she died in real life too, as I've said previously. And he feels heartbroken because he feels like it's his fault for basically putting all of the onus on like her being a concubine and like pressuring her to be a concubine on her. And he does kind of blame himself for her death. But after she dies, he has to kind of like make himself sort of forget her, to the point where 20 years go by and people really believe that he's forgotten her, but he hasn't, because he goes to like a treasure chest that she has, and he's looking through all her stuff and he's crying because he misses her so much. And then he dies at the end of the show, and the show reunites them in like the afterlife, and in the afterlife he doesn't do kingly duties, he's just with her, and it ends with them as a beautiful couple just kind of like being together. But I think what I pulled out of this show is like the class dynamics between obviously a slave and a master, a servant and a master, is very obvious here. I do think it's reminiscent of like slave movies where there's a slave that the master kind of like falls in love with. That level of discomfort with the massive class gap between them, and the power and control that the male lead has as a man and as the crown prince and then as a king over the female lead. Like, there's even a moment in the show where he chokes her and he tells her like, I control your life and death, right? That's scary. And while there is a lot of love between them, we can't ignore the class differences and how that influences the way that a lot of us are going to perceive and interpret their relationship. And while it's, I guess, romantic, I don't also want to romanticize something like this. I don't even want to imagine that they had that kind of dynamic in real life, because they really did love each other, right? But in the show, it's very clear that it's this very like uncomfortable dynamic between the two of them. And also like, she's the only one he cares about, right? Like, nothing can happen to her, but all the other court ladies are very disposable. And this kind of like leads me into like my next point about the show. So in the show, the court ladies also have like a head court lady who kind of like heads this like assassin of court ladies to protect them against like a king going bad or something like that, right? Because the crown prince, or the male lead's father, went mad and it hurt a lot of court ladies. So basically there's a court lady that's trying to protect the court ladies from something like that happening again. But the show kind of like makes her character a little weaker, because she's not doing it necessarily to just protect the court ladies. She's also doing it because the grandfather of the male lead, she was in love with him and he didn't marry her. He married another court lady, and she's also doing the whole assassin court ladies thing to basically get back at the grandfather. And so that kind of weakens the whole I'm trying to protect my court ladies thing, because we're basically slaves here and we don't have a lot of autonomy. Which I didn't love, to be honest, because it took a lot of way from like the kind of like feminist kind of power of that story, and like a slave trying to take back power, because ultimately they were slaves, right? They didn't have a lot of freedom to do what they wanted to do, and the only time they were let go from being court ladies and let out is if the king said, okay, yes, you can go. But I do not believe they could then marry after that point as well, which is really, really sad to think about. Then you have, I guess I would call him the second male lead, who plays another main role in it. I would say he's pretty much a villain. He's played by Kang Hoon, and he plays Hong Deok-ro, who is like the right-hand man of the king. But he's pretty much like a snake that like sheds new skin, because he treats court ladies terribly, and he abuses the power that the crown prince hands to him because he wants more power, and he just goes crazier with the power as time goes on, and it's really horrible to see. But he has a horrific end too. Like, he dies alone and abandoned and is kicked out of the palace because things that he does kind of gets too far. And part of the reason why he's also let go and the king reached his limit with him is also because he nearly hurt the female lead, and that just broke the king's heart, and so he couldn't like handle this second male lead any longer as a result of that. So yeah, it was a beautiful drama. I rated it a 9.5 out of 10 on MDL. I rewatched certain scenes over the past few days, like over and over and over, and I keep ruminating on these characters and their relationship and all that kind of stuff. And also politically, the drama is actually really interesting. If anything, it focuses more on the politics for the first 15 episodes than it does the romance, and the romance is sort of sprinkled in, but I think I like that actually. I don't think that's bad at all, and I actually appreciate the drama for doing that. But yeah, it was definitely a very beautiful story, and I loved it. And it kind of reminded me of, it's not similar in any way, but just reminiscent of kind of story of Cunning Palace in a sense. And like the toxicity in their relationship is so very blatant, but it's not the same as Cunning Palace, because it's more about classism, I think, than just you're evil and I'm not so evil in Cunning Palace. But let me know what you thought about Red Sleeve in the comments below. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Like this video, please hit the like button below. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.